Hey everybody, welcome to the UncomMEN podcast. And do we have a show for you? Do we have a show for today, Chris?
We have a feel-good show for you.
Feel-good show for you. And today's topic is about feelings. Feelings.
Whoa, whoa.
So that's our topic today, feelings. And to go and get us started with our subtopics, Chris.
So I just wanted to cover, because we talked a lot about, when we were talking about this topic of feelings, what are kind of our stories growing up with feelings. Did you did you talk about feelings growing up in your household? Yeah. What was that connection for you?
Yeah. So that's something that you want to kind of think of yourself too. Like growing up, or as you're growing up, are you taught to express your feelings, or do you hold them in? And so what I was sharing with Chris as we were preparing for this episode, was that with my parents, my dad was a veteran, 2 tours of Vietnam, Navy Seavey. Okay, and so because of what he went through in his early 20s, as a parent, he wasn't very expressive in his feelings. So as a man, I learned to kind of hold my feelings in, that it wasn't cool, all right? Also, the neighborhood I grew in Dog Patch, way, we had to be tough. You know what I'm saying? You didn't want to be weak. You wanted to always portray yourself in a way that you couldn't be messed with, type of thing. And so I grew up in that avenue, but also I grew up in the church. And my mom was a talker, and she's a communicator, and so she was very expressive. So I got the best of both worlds. I was able to actually learn how to communicate and express myself, but I also learned that I needed to sometimes just be strong and not communicate stuff. But when you don't do that, there's a side effect. And that's we want to express to you, is if you don't share your feelings, your thoughts, it's not feminine to share how you feel, okay? And regardless of whatever you might be, male, female, whatever your situation is, we just want you to know that you should be encouraged to share that positively. So you can see this guitar hanging on my wall. That's a way that I express myself. I teach my children to do that as well. I write stuff down, you know what I mean? And so whatever that is for you, you've got to find a way to share that with a friend, your partner, yourself, through prayer. There's ways that you can express that so you don't have like an emotional outburst and cause havoc or damage. I know I've made mistakes in my past and I've made bad choices, but through those choices I've been able to find peace in finding positive relationships that can allow for me to express myself correctly,
Yeah, and our emotional journey, so to speak, is different but the same, right? And I feel like it's common to have those similarities in stories about emotions when we talk to other men, or we identify that within each other, right? So my parents, my mom was very protective, right? Very mama bear type of situation, and wanted to kind of umbrella myself and my siblings from all the bad in the world, right? So if you said something, whether it was a mistake that somebody else made, never go near that again. You mentioned the Croods mentality, right?
Never not be afraid.
Right?
If you've seen that cartoon.
And my dad was very connected with the comforting side of things, very soft personality. He was the guy that I went to, and if I had some sort of emotional buildup, if I hugged a guy, like insta tears, right? That's the connection I had with my dad. But avoided confrontation, right? Which I think was a pivotal, demise of him and my mom's relationship. So I grew up with both of those, extremes, right? Avoiding confrontation, not identifying emotion or connecting, but also, overly protective of my family unit and those that were close to me, which also is disconnecting in a lot of ways, right? Just pulling that out. And so I feel like as men, that's a very common tale, right? We're almost wired and taught to disconnect from those things because they make us weak, right? And they are what girls do, and that's what femininity is all about. And I personally disagree with all that. I feel like those are parts of what makes a strong person stronger, is being able to identify those, right? It's not about being soft or hard. It's about being stronger. Identifying those things makes us smarter, right? Smarter people to identify those things, but also stronger to overcome, connect, and communicate, those feelings with the people that are around us. And so part of that is emotional recognition.
Absolutely.
Right? And so I talked about my struggle with emotional recognition because of, how I was brought up, right? And you talked about overcoming that,
right,
and how you do that and identify that.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a couple good things. Vulnerability, I think, is strength. And it took me, I'm 39 now. It took about 37 years to learn that. I'm going through what we went through, sharing our story. For those of you who know my story with losing my brother Ben, and how he and our family fought against a horrible disease, ALS. Sharing that story was humbling and challenging, but being vulnerable brought more strength, and it was able to allow others to identify in a greater cause, and it just brought people out of the woodworks for support and love and encouragement, because we all go through something, and Bob Marley said it best: every man's burden is the heaviest. So whatever you're carrying, that's the heaviest. Whatever I'm carrying, that's the heaviest for me. Whatever Chris is carrying, that's the heaviest. And like I touched on my dad's situation, being a veteran, and it wasn't until recent that my dad started to deal with those emotions through therapy. Okay, and because of that, I have a more expressive father. I have a father who's more willing to hug me now than ever, and now we're adults, and the relationship I have with him is different than when we were younger, when I was a child, but he's still my dad. It's always my dad, and we always want that love from our family member. Specifically our parents, for those that are blessed to have their parents in their lives to this day. And so I say that because you can change. Whatever that is, when you find a way to positively express yourself, to let those feelings out in a channel that will lift you up and allow for you to release it, then you're going to find that peace, and you'll be able to live your life more enjoyably.
Yeah, you said some really key elements in that story, and thank you for sharing all that. That's a tough thing for you to do, but pivotally, you learn to identify those emotions not just with yourself, right? Identify, when you were sad, when you were angry, right? When you were frustrated, all those things that come with mourning and the struggles and frustrations of going through a battle like that, but also identify those in others as well at different times, right? And so you might be frustrated while your sister or brother were sad, right? And so to connect those dots is truly pivotal in that emotional growth. And the same thing with your dad's story too, right? So many years, and take this opportunity to challenge men, because your dad's how old?
77.
Just taking his emotional growth journey now, so it's still possible, no matter how old we are, to take that journey and identify those emotions, so we can connect with the people around us. Because regardless of what we're taught as men, right? Whether we were taught to not to connect, or we were taught just to connect with emotions, it's still important to identify emotions within other people, so that we can communicate how we feel and receive how others feel, so that we can communicate properly, right? That's the whole basis behind emotional growth, right? So you hit on all those things, and how you were able to grow even through a difficult time, right? And grow emotionally. And it's a great story. Your dad, like at his age, is able to start that journey and take that journey, and now become the father he's probably trying to be years and years ago. Be that for you now. It's just God's will that it happened now, rather than meant. It was just meant to be, right? And so talk a little bit more about that emotional growth, and how you talked about using your guitar to express feelings, right? So that's part of communication, right? We don't all have the ability to communicate through words, right? And sometimes it's not the best to communicate through emotions, right? Yes, through crying, and yes, through anger, but that's why sometimes we're told to take a boxing class,
Mm.
right? Or to go outside and scream and, that kind of stuff. Sometimes it's not directly received by another person to do that, right? Like, I'm not going to take you out in the backyard when I'm upset because I love you and punch you in the face, right? Or do that to anybody close to us. But it's about channeling that in a healthy way. And you mentioned doing that through music.
Right. So one of the things I played in a band for a while, but also in addition to playing music, there's songs I've never performed. There's just stuff that I wrote down that I was able to utilize. In fact, I found stuff in our move I was sharing with you recently that had old stuff that I had written down, poems, stuff that I was just dealing with, whether it was financial, if it was a relationship, stuff with school or whatever. Just like as we grow and change, there's all sorts of feelings, and especially now with whatever's going on in society at this time, we've all got to find a positive way to express itself, as opposed to just being a bully online type of thing. Like you can write this stuff down. You can write a book, literally. There's ways that you can make a difference with your thoughts and emotions for yourself and others. And when I say write a book, I'm encouraging you guys, literally, like, if some people I see that post stuff, it's like, why don't you write that down?
Yeah.
Or like, if you feel that strongly, organize that, and there's probably others who might feel that way too. And often writing for me is huge. So like with the music, to get back to that, it was the writing. You know what I mean? And then connecting those words and from a poem into a song by putting together chords was the release. And I didn't always have to share that with somebody. Do you know what I mean? It was just doing it. Just that action.
Right.
And there's stuff I don't even remember the chords. I went to words that I have found recently. But there's some pretty cool lyrics. I'm like, dang, bro.
It's deep.
Yeah, there's some good stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe another time I can share that with our audience. But right now I'm going to just keep my feelings on that paper. Okay? Because I was able to express them. You know what I mean? And this way I'm not holding on to them. And that's what we're getting to is that release. When it comes to your feelings, you've got to find a positive way to release. And like for sports, for us now it's different with sports, unfortunately. But often, sports is a way. For me, at coaching, we get a small group of kids together on Sundays that we do flag football, and that's a wonderful release of the kids. We're outside. It's a wonderful way for me to stay involved and be a mentor and influencer for the youth, including my own children. So there's different avenues. I don't know what that is for yourself. You've got to identify that because every body is totally different. That's what I can speak to.
Yeah, and try new things. Josh mentioned several, channeling through music, right? You do have, physical abilities, whether that's using a punching bag, whether that's going outside and screaming in a pillow, whether it's removing yourself from a situation and meditating, right? It's prayer is a super solid one. There's communicating just your emotions. Something I learned, my wife is, she's probably not teaching me on purpose, but she is, that it's okay for me to say, God, I'm so angry, I'm so frustrated. Yeah. And all she needs to do is put her hand on my shoulder or say, I understand what you're going through. How can I help you get through that?
Wow.
And so for her just to receive and appreciate how I'm feeling already takes a huge load off my shoulder. And you can be that for your partner as well if you have the open mind, the open ears. I mean, we talked about listening in a previous episode. But those are all forms of emotional growth. So I challenge you, that's part of being uncommon, right? Try new things. Try new scapegoats. Express your feelings in a healthy way. Share that with your family. Share those feelings with your partner. It's okay to say, family, I'm frustrated, right? Just that statement will probably take a huge weight off your shoulders. And you'll be surprised at how much they receive that emotion and want to help you get through that. That's what family is all about. That's what emotional is all about. So I challenge the UncomMEN community to take multiple avenues and connect with your emotions, connect with other people's emotions, and I want to see you all emotionally grow over time.
That's huge. And the other thing too is, guys, when you walk down that path, just a warning, you're going to find yourself being that for someone else. Because you're going to find what you're seeking for, what you're looking for, and as you seek that for yourself, guess what? There's others seeking that too, you know? And so you can be that individual to be that outlet type of thing. And also we talked about, you know, with feelings, you know, receiving that. You know, so in a relationship setting, you know, if you're sharing your feelings, like your wife was able to acknowledge that, well, she's giving you a verbal contract that she's willing to receive that. So you're not alone.
Right.
And that's the greatest thing that I've learned through challenges, difficult times. So you're not alone. Chris isn't alone. I'm not alone. It might feel like that in the moment, but you're not. And so get that out of your head, you know. But take the time, for whatever reason. You ever notice, like when you try and call friends or somebody, like when you got something going on, nobody
picks up the phone. Yeah.
Why? My thought is that's when you need to deal with it. There's something going on.
Or pray.
Absolutely. Well, then that's what I mean by that, to connect those dots. You need to be alone with God.
Yeah.
That's how it's going to be ultimately handled, because we can do this on our own. None of us can, okay? So we challenge you as well to dive into that spiritual swimming pool and just grow closer to God, because when you can have that positive outlet with yourself and others, because God is through others too. You know, like there's conversations I have with strangers or friends, and it's like God speaking to me through a friend or family member.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so this might be that for you. And so again, we do thank you for checking out the Uncommon Podcast. Please stay tuned for the next episode. Have a wonderful day. Talk soon.